Is hearing and listening. Okay, it's a great honor and pleasure tonight to introduce you to distinguished composer and director and music producer Sven Helbig, founder of the Dresden Symphony Orchestra, the first to perform exclusively contemporary music. His music consists of a combination of electronic and orchestra and choir in what is called Gesamtkunstwerk, which has an important forerunner in Baroque Bernini, who called art il bel composto. He's currently on a tour that is a project mixing up choir and electronics, and he has decided to devote his only break, that is a few days of free time, to Rome and to us. So please join me in welcoming Sven Helbig. Thank you.
I'm not Sven Helbig, but I just really wanted to add a few words. No, he is really one of the most fascinating composers alive today. He's groundbreaking in what he does, and it's different. It's really a great honor for us to have him here with us. He's filling all the biggest stages in the world. I mean, he's just been in the new Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg. It was sold out. I don't know how many thousand people go into that space. Now he's been traveling he's been to Cuba. He's been to Argentina. He's based, in Madrid. Has just been mentioned. So he's traveling the world, he's playing with the biggest orchestras, how am I supposed to refer to him as a composer? Is he a classical composer? Well, he's composed something, he's composed a music drama. He's also composed something for the Fauré Quartet, for René Pape, the leading classical musicians. So he could be seen as a classical composer. He also had the classical training. On the other hand, he's been cooperating with Rammstein, with the Pet Shop Boys. His music is really also pleasing, beautiful to the ear. So, no, this is not really classical contemporary music. This is really pop music. So how should we classify him? So there seems to be this duality, but this duality comes together in him as a person. And in him as a person, he's a wonderful person, and we all, many of you have already met him, I guess. So it's an enormous personal pleasure for me to have him here, and I'm looking forward now to hearing his keynote presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. Big words. Some of them are not true. But it's true that I have a few days off, and I'm very happy to be here in Rome for the first time, actually. So I have seen many stages, this is true, but Rome was always, shifted, postponed, cancelled, or whatever. So it's my second day now here, and I enjoy it very much. Especially I enjoy to be here and part of this wonderful conference, which opened with like a firestorm yesterday and made my brain really left in flames. And it's interesting. So the whole day I spent with thinking of what can I add to all these wonderful scientists, philosophers, artists that are here and doing their speeches. And I think, so I changed this many times because I think there is a point that maybe is important, that is not foremost a philosophical point. So, and I try to explain you how I came up with those ideas and how I make my music growing out of this idea. And I want to tell you a bit about my life, which had some stages. So I'm not 20 anymore. So I've seen many things. So I grew up in the East. And I want to tell you about the things that I discovered for music while going through many different oppressive dualities that I survived in a way. And the first one was I grew up in the east of Germany, as I mentioned. And there we had the major opposite between, of course, the capitalist enemy and the the socialist friend, and we. And then everybody was pretty sure that we are on the right side in the east of Germany. This changed in '89 when the wall came down, of course. And now many of us think we are on the right side again, which is also not true. But I lived in that world where it was really precise to say, there, after this border, there is the evil, and it ends here, and they shoot you if you cross it, and we here are right. So this was and then we had other divisions between the Stasi and the people that have been observed. And then I went to the army in the GDR. Other great dualities. It was funny because the people that I was together with in the army, we all made our extended secondary school, is that right? And we wanted to study, and then we came into the army, lost our clothes and our hair, and lost our identity in a way, and this opened the door to major opposites and dualities again. So the people that have been there half a year and the youngsters that came have been enemies again. And so it was, you could of course see, we had the same life before, and now from one day to another it all changed. And after 1.5 years we came out and it was all okay again. It was just a division for 1.5 years with a lot of crap that I had to survive. And you can imagine how it was being in the army in the East, so very far from home. Then I came out, and I did not want to study music that time, so this came much later. So I started working in a steel factory because this was the only job that was available, and I didn't learn anything, so I did this extended secondary school, as I mentioned, and then I went to the factory, and there was the new division for me between work and life. It was like capitalism and socialism. It didn't have anything to do with each other. So I came out from work, and then I started a life as a Sven. And when I went to work, I was a different person with different realities, and it was crazy. I could easily say that I could never ever survive in an environment like this. So I changed it. I was very happy to make the exam at the music school in Dresden and started music there to learn music. But meanwhile, I discovered to play the drums, which I still love a lot. This was not my first instrument, but the first instrument that really wanted me to become a musician, because it was like, wow, when I sat down the first time at the drums. So I went to the music school, and now I thought, okay, now it's just musicians, and no division anymore. But there was the classical department and the popular department. And I don't know if you will believe it, they did not talk to each other. It was impossible. I mean, it was funny, even the drummers. I mean, I was a jazz drummer, and they have been drummers for the timpani and the mallets, which I also play, but just because my entrance in the music school was through the jazz door, told them not to talk with me. And it was always something, some anger, and we were not allowed to use their rooms, and they did not come into our rooms, and even in the cafeteria, they did not talk to each other. It's crazy. And also this ended. I left to New York, studied drums there, and came back doing this orchestra project that was mentioned before. And I became a musician. I composed and did my life stuff and became better and better. And then all of a sudden, Deutsche Grammophon sent me an email and told me that they would like to release my music, which is great because it's the most powerful classical music label in the world. I don't know if you know this. The Deutsche Grammophon is very, very huge, and all the best classical recordings are at that Deutsche Grammophon. I was a collector, so I was at Deutsche Grammophon, signed at Deutsche Grammophon, and I signed at the most powerful booking agency for the classical musicians, which is Harrison Parrott in London. So I had the perfect setup. I was a composer at Deutsche Grammophon and Harrison Parrott Agency. But then it was again so complicated because my audience was not there anymore, because they don't enter the classical concert venues, because they don't know what to wear when they go in, or they don't have the money to buy a ticket, or they just don't like that the light is on, or they don't like that they don't have a low bass and whatever they miss. So they just did not come. I had a very old audience and did the stuff that I will play for you tonight, and then you will probably know better what I'm talking about now. So again, a division. I mean, then my life and my work became one. This was the only thing that I had settled so far, but all the other stuff was still around, and still major divisions. So with the next album, the choir album, I cancelled Deutsche Grammophon and I cancelled Harrison Parrott. I'm now at a very small label. They try their best. They're smaller, and nobody knows them. They're called Neue Meister. And I have a brilliant agency that if they don't get the stage, they just rent the stage and they go. It's not just about the money, it's very open, and also other journalists come and the music blogs write, and I have the right audience again. So we are there. Less money, but a much better life, which was fantastic. And this is, this was a key for what happened later, because then through making music and reading about music, I discovered that the music has to all the components that I saw, that I told you that I had to see in my life, somehow had to come together. I started playing the clarinet when I was a child, and before that I was building little radios, so I discovered the music through my self-built radios. And now this was all on the table, but I did not know what to do with it, because the audience, I could not understand why, no matter where you go, there is always an enemy around that has the opposite position. So I was reading a lot. So I started being interested in philosophy and also in literature a lot. And the more I read about this, the more confusing it was. And I read about like Adorno and his concept of music, which is not for the audience, which is also a crazy concept, and it was completely the other another experience that I had when I was in New York to study in the drums, because I went to the black clubs, and there was always, my experience was that on stage is just a poetic transformation of what is in the room. And I love this concept, and because they have the same cultural code somehow, and you, as an artist, you are not a stranger coming from somewhere and do your stuff and you tell about you. It's always a give and take, it's communication. And I couldn't find this, and all the music around me was but somehow built on the crazy idea that you compose for yourself and for the future and some people that you don't know. And there was a story I read about Alban Berg, who was hiding last row after a concert because the audience was applauding, and his teacher Arnold Schönberg was in the room. So because he thought it's a wrong thing to make music that people understand. So, and summing that up, I ended, something has to be wrong with the human, because itself, and also me and everybody, we lost just something, because all the stages, all the ages, everything I saw in my life, it was always the same thing. People try to divide and be on one or the other part. And I think that's totally crazy, because sometimes, especially in the GDR, and what I mentioned with the army, you go in for 40 years and then you go out after 40 years and you have two different parties. And still, until today, the people in the East and the people in the West, they don't talk to each other much, and they hate each other. I mean, the majorities, just with one exception, Stefan and me. And what is wrong? And I found maybe one point yesterday when I've heard this wonderful Skype talk. I mean, I did not found out. I rediscovered my thought about this, that it has to be probably with what we see in ourselves and our understanding of ourselves without any relation to the environment. If we would, like, we can break it down to even the most simple things. Let's say you wake up in the morning, what do you eat? What do you eat when? And for what? And what amount? I mean, the most simple things are somehow wrong. We have, if you look around, we live in so many wrong concepts, and the only way to survive them is to create a duality. We have a wrong concept of economics. We have a wrong concept of health. We have a wrong concept of financials. We have a wrong concept of societies. And the only way to make us defining ourselves and finding a way through this dark forest is to just create enemies, to be sure we are on the right side somehow, because we would be totally lost if we would really accept that there is no duality, it's all even, and we are all, like she said, little waves on the same ocean. And if I say like little things, we just talked about that. If I just had the speech in Argentina at the university, I was asking the students, because they had great ideas about their art and what they want, and they had definition of what to do and what not to do. And then I asked them, is there anybody in the room who knows what moon we have? Is there anybody here who knows it? Do you know it?
The moon what?
The moon. How is the moon face at the moment? 1. So it's fading, okay? It's getting smaller. And it's all the little things. We don't have any awareness of ourselves in relation to the nature and to our souls and to our body. And this makes all the divisions. And then you have to live a life through divisions and with wrong concepts of good and bad, good and evil. And this defines my position as an artist, because I think the only thing, I mean, I'm just a little pixel in the whole picture, but what can I do? I try to make a music for people. I try to create a room where everybody who listens to it can somehow meet him or herself and go to the edge of their self-confidence and self-definition. And to achieve this, I combine everything that I discovered in art. So I write my lyrics, I use the electronics to go dimensioned in, to have the low bass, because in the choir they can just sing a D, to have the high frequencies, to have the groove, to have the orchestra, to have the choir, to have all instruments, artistic instruments, to bring light into the most far corners. Because with just the lyrics, for example, there's no word, no way to express pain in words. What can you say? It's hurting, or yeah, it's not. I mean, the real pain doesn't have any words. So, but music can go deep into that space. And on the other hand, words give structure and give definition to the story and to the music and to the art piece. And so, yeah, this is a long way. I came up with this, what you call Gesamtkunstwerk, which is a non-total, the English word is total work of art, but I don't want to use the word total because I try to incorporate everything, all the aspects, and also an understanding for why people are that way. And giving them a music that they have first a beautiful surface and then take them to the other side and show them here. It's not the evil side, it's great. And I hope I can, in the concert later, you will discover what I meant, going from the bright to the dark side and discovering the dark is actually as bright as the bright side. And before I make more loops in my speech, I would like to bring Stefan Sorgner to the stage because we have so many interesting conversations about this, and he, as a philosopher, can probably give me some questions that I can answer.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on the total work of art, on the Gesamtkunstwerk, because on the one hand you're talking about non-dualities, and then suddenly there's this concept of the total work of art, of the Gesamtkunstwerk, which is such a rich history, and sort of you've got the connotation obviously with Wagner, and Wagner tried to realize that Gesamtkunstwerk in order to change the culture, to reunify the culture, to bring about just such a new duality between good and evil. And suddenly these are the connotations one has, one thinks about the total work of art, about the Gesamtkunstwerk. But that is so exactly contrary to what you're trying, what you're working on and what your ideals are. And
yeah, I mean, my first contact with the total work of art was, of course, Wagner. The first thing I saw was the Parsifal, and I just liked the idea that there's also a division, especially in the West European culture, between young and old. And I found it just fantastic that the old, the knights, get their power back by the arriving of the young Parsifal, asking the wrong questions, actually, and the beautiful friendship then between him and Gronemans. And I loved this, and later I found out about many more concepts like this, like the Scriabin concept, the Mysterium. Scriabin wanted to build a hall in India where he wanted to write a total piece of art. He just left the lyrics, then unfortunately he died, and he was sure that if they would play this piece every day, this was his plan actually. There was the First World War was hiding him from going to India and start building it, but he had already enough money, and he wanted to play this piece with 3,000 actors every single day, as until every people on the planet have seen it, and then he was sure if everybody has seen it once, then the world would start to burn down, and then the new, better human being would somehow be created.
again, but it has something, an implication for an entire culture, for a wider impact. And this is not, I think, sort of what you're working on. Sort of, because it's not supposed to, you're not presenting the one answer, which everyone is supposed to subscribe to. So it's rather, it might be total work of art insofar that it appeals to intuitions, emotionality, sensuality, but also intellectuality to a great variety of people. But on the other hand, no, I think, aren't you just trying to propose a suggestion? You know, just some visions,
yes,
just
of
some
course.
examples?
Yeah. I don't have any answers. This is the privilege of an artist, that you can have more questions than answers. Unlike you should answer something. But
It doesn't give the answers, but sort of keeps the motion, keeps the discussion going in order to undermine these encrusted structures. And these are what the post-human philosophers are.
I know you are a tree in this wonderful philosophic garden, and I like this. No, I don't give answers. It's actually very hard to say, because the music is free of those concepts. And I always, if I see a little border and something that I try to avoid or I don't like, then I have a look and see how can I build this in. Is there space? Is there room for it? And so I build it up and my equipment is growing all the time. Today, I don't have the choir with me and the orchestra, so I use the recordings of them. But I constantly question this. You know, I compose a piece for choir, and it's supposed to be sung in a concert without any electronics. And then I take it in here and see how far can we go with it. What is left? Is there room? And how can I transport from here to there? And can I somehow put it in an environment where everybody would say there it doesn't belong to, and it's totally wrong, and let it survive or let it die or whatever. I actually started with combining electronics and classical also by a major divider, which is Norman Leprecht. Norman Leprecht is the most important classical music reviser. He writes books about Gustav Mahler, for example, and I read in a review about the Vivaldi recomposed recording by Max Richter, and he wrote, "This is absolutely not possible. You can never touch a piece of art and do something with it. It's impossible. You should never do this." And he became crazy about this. And later also he wrote a bad review about me, because we were talking about this, try to achieve is a certain kind of beauty to open the doors to other spaces. And he hates this. He says, this is, if you write the melody nowadays, it's fantastic how the people from the classical world react. The headline was para classics, which is crazy. It's because it's not allowed to write a beautiful melody with a few beautiful chords anymore, because it's all, the music history is gone already further. So we don't have actually the harmonic system between minor and major anymore. And so he should also devote, it's fantastic what they wrote about when Richard Strauss, he gave the world the fantastic Salome and the fantastic Electra. And the people in Vienna wrote, this is the landing of the new avant-garde, the perfect music, and this opens the doors to new music, and everybody loved it. But then after the Second World War, when he saw that the theaters where he worked in, like in Munich, like in Weimar, like in Dresden, it was all gone, it was all destroyed. All his work was destroyed, all his favorite concert and opera houses. And then he wrote the Metamorphosis for the solo strings, or 32 solo strings, and went back to melodies, because he had to find a way to express his sad mood. And this was just possible with those melodies and chords. I mean, after his achievement, everybody should say, okay, we allow him to write this. But then you can still see it's all, you can still research and read those reviews. Everybody hated them from the next day. The same people that loved he said this, Verrat, was this?
Betrayal.
A betrayal to music, and you cannot write a Salome and then all of a sudden go back. It's not allowed. And after I was reading all this, I said, okay, that just says that I will do this, and every day I'm doing this. So I go between tonal and atonal music, I go between classical and popular, I do the Rammstein and the classical world, and I mix this all together, and it works, and the people all around the planet like it a lot. So it's actually very successful, and I don't know what was the problem actually, but I still have problems with the little the music critics, of course.
But once influenced by, in the Adorno tradition, Frankfurt School, I was talking about your work and at a conference actually on post-human aesthetics. And I would have thought, yeah, post-human, in a place where they have a major strength on post-human aesthetic, they would be open. They would embrace also, they would accept that the beautiful in music can also increase plurality if it's taken not as something which actually counts as a final answer or as some unchanging structures, but just as a further option, which can also correspond and does correspond to the psychophysiology of many people. But when I was talking about that, there was a few people who actually reacted, no, it's too beautiful. The beauty in music today and in all other types of art, that cannot be proper art anymore. That has to be like, that's created by the culture industry. That's created, you know, it cannot come from within. It cannot be sort of part of one's own idiosyncratic psychophysiology. And this is such a widespread phenomenon, even among people who should know better, or even among people who are trying to move away from the traditional dualist, humanist structures, and even, you know, also Frankfurt School, they're trying to move away, but there you still can find, no, there's something, the traditional subject-object distinction, which is still a relict of the dualist humanist tradition. And so it seems to be that our cultural heritage, from going back, you know, from Plato via the Christianity to our day, seems to have created such strong a second nature, which becomes part of us, that it's very difficult for us until in a certain intellectual culture to break away from that tradition and to accept that non-duality, because it's so difficult actually to use words to describe that and to institutionalize things. I think it's a lot to do with this.
I would like to know what they say. Who's writing the song that the mother could sing for her daughter in the evening to make her sleep? I mean, it would be fantastic if the best artists that we have in our society would do this work, because this is just the reason why we have so much crap that fills those gaps, because all the artists think they have to do something for their small circles or for the future or for whatever, I don't know. And I miss this. I think the artists should be there, because this is also, I say, our thought somehow, that we have all the mentioned wrong concepts, because we are losing so much culture, especially in Germany. There is, I mean, when you go here out of the door, you still get something good to eat, because this is something cultural that still survived. And this is even hard in Germany. The people don't know how to cook anymore, they don't know how to sing anymore, they don't know how to dance anymore, and they don't know anything about their bodies, and they don't know anything about nature. And but this goes down, it's not just, you know, art is made by humans and grown-ups, and we have to go back and back and back and back, and I think it will always come down to educational concepts that are totally wrong. I see this because I have a young daughter, she has the first class, and when I see what they learn in the school, it's crazy. And also, another example, when they grow up and when you study medicine, for example, there's still no subject that involves food.
It's incredible.
Doesn't exist. It's crazy.
The most important questions. I mean, I've learned that. It's sort of, I didn't realize it. So when I was younger, then I was reading Nietzsche, and he actually made me realize, no, the most philosophical questions are the question relevant to oneself is, you know, what suits my body? Which temperature, which surroundings, which atmosphere, what am I eating? Sort of to take seriously the food, to watch out, to be aware of what I'm eating. And it's also moving in the post-humanist philosophy, in the post-human tradition. Just now, I just read a preface read by John Cabot-Sin. John Cabot-Sin is a physician who sort of realized the concept of mindfulness 30-40 years ago. Then it was entered in companies, and it was used in order to make workers more efficient. But in the end, I mean, the mindfulness originally comes from the Buddhist background, and he wrote the preface of the new book, of the book The Embodied Mind, which so beautiful describes a post-humanist ontology, a non-dualist ontology, by means of which they try to explain that the mind is nothing separate from the world, but that the mind came about as a process, as a consequence of an evolutionary process, and as a consequence of this post-humanist thinking, John Kabat-Zinn integrated into the concept of mindfulness. So the mindfulness, if you live it, if you actually take it seriously on an everyday basis, then you watch out how the environment is, what the moon phase is, what you eat, and that's all part of this new altered understanding concerning one's own being in one's own interrelation with one's environment without there being a categorical separation.
Yeah, this is fantastic. That's why I love you, Stefan, because you can bring it to the point. It was funny. We met the first time after the premiere. Was it the premiere or one performance of a piece that I wrote, incorporating actors and singers and choir and orchestra and electronics and visuals in Weimar. And then he came up. We met, and he said this was a posthumanist artwork. And so we got in contact, because until then I did not know that my thinking of evening out all the dualities and evening out the relation between humans and all other organics is posthuman. So then I started studying it and reading it, and so I became aware that I'm a posthumanist, obviously. So now I'm here. It's fantastic.
It was a wonderful. If you get the chance to see Vom Lärm der Welt, it's an absolutely must-see, where again that difference between sort of on the one hand there's this philosophical, religious, more theoretical level reflection. On the other hand, there are different parts where actually in contemporary life episodes it describes sort of something from genetic modifications to abortion, all the challenges we are facing today. So, and I regularly went to music dramas, and then I ventured saw that music drama, and I was absolutely fascinating, because I realized, no, this is something which actually does all the things I was expecting of a post-human work of art. And so I was totally thrilled by that. And then later on, and this is also, I guess, something which we will see, later, fairly soon. So here we've got, one could say it's a
I will not dance tonight. We are missing that.
But it would be some kind of post-human artist, cyborg artist, because you're on the one hand functioning, in the role of a DJ, with playing your own music, some parts of your own music. At the same time, you're improvising upon it. At the same time, you're playing what you originally composed. So you've got three roles in one. You're the composer, but at the same time, the artist. So it's like, again, breaking. It's all the dualities, the traditional dualities, are breaking up, and so this is again something which one could refer to as a wonderful example of a post-human work of art, and even better because just before before you started to talk, you said, well, I was wondering, what are you going to play? Will that be the piece I listened to in Weimar? And so no, obviously it had to be adapted to the atmosphere. It had to be adapted to the right place. Again, I took in a way a traditional, so essentialist understanding, no one word, you wouldn't alter it, no. It's again, obviously it has to be adapted to the place here, and you took a lot of time in order to make it suit for tonight's evening.
It will go much more to the edge. So, and I try to do my best to incorporate all the things that I have heard so far. It's very inspiring and very refreshing, and I will highly recommend to all my people back home to come to the next conference. And so thanks for having me here.
Maybe we can have a couple of questions. Yeah, many thanks that you were here firstly. And for him. So I guess if you're having some question now, you're willing to take some answers, give
Yes,
some
of course.
answers.
Yeah,
So just before we have the concert, we have a couple of minutes for doing so.
thank you for a really fascinating talk. Normally, I tend to think that having composers talk about what we're doing doesn't add anything, but in this case, it's pretty clear. My problem has, however, been thinking about what would post-human music be like. And I have my standard analogy. What is chimpanzee music like? And chimpanzees like making sounds. And we do that too, but we have added something. We have realized new meanings, new purposes for these sounds. We try to express various things, and the chimps really can't do that. They have a limited. So by that line, of course, there could be post-human music that does all the same things we do, really much better, but also adds new forms of purposes that we cannot understand as mere humans. This is, of course, the standard transhumanist understanding post-human, let's say. One can also do the kind of critical post-humanist view and say, actually, we might want to expand the music beyond these boundaries. So I'm kind of curious how you think about, well, in 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000 years, what kinds of music would exist there? Or whatever would have evolved from what we currently call music?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because what I do deals actually with my idea of that, or my thoughts that there will be not 1,000,000 years. We have 50 or 60. And the post-humanist music today has to deal with that situation. I mean, we made that the air is poisoned, the water is poisoned, the fish is poisoned, the meat is poisoned, everything is poisoned. And everything is, in America I would say, is fucked up. And we have 50 or to 60 years. Now to think about music in 100 or 1,000 years is so selfish. I cannot do it. It's like if you are on a sinking ship and the captain says, we can reach the harbor, but just if everybody takes whatever they have and put the water out. Would you sit down and write a string quartet for in 1,000,000 years? We all, I mean, if art can anything do today, then just go into the position and go to the people and tell them, hey, we are living in a wrong concept, and make music for now, for today, and try always to, like in the film, that's why I love film so much. You'll sit in the editing room, and in every edit, you have to ask yourself, will the audience get it? Will they get it? Is it clear enough? And write music and ask yourself, is it clear enough? Can the people understand now? And what do they listen? Adapt this and go from there the next step. So I don't care about throwing borders or whatever and develop something, and I'm not in the position. I mean, I know there are many artists that call themselves post-humanist artists, and they do a lot with technology, and it's all focused on what can we do now, which was not possible 100 years ago or even yesterday. I can do things with the new generation of computers that I couldn't do last year. So I do this, but this is not my focus. It's just the instrument I use to tell something totally different. Namely, write music for the people. It's very necessary for the arising of technology. And if we talk about the singularity, meeting technology and humans, I don't have any doubts that technology will be there, but I have my doubts about the humans. And if the humans I know, the ones with the air and the water and the fish and the animal, are they programming them? Are they developing this technology? And I have serious doubts about what we will have then. So what we can do as artists is just try to go to the people, make them aware, make them meet themselves, make them see where they are, make them see their concepts, and try to erase the wrong dualities. This is my concept. This is post-humanist music for me. Was this what you...
Well, it was a good answer. Who cares about the question?
There was a further question.
Thank you very much for your talk. You told us how you were struggling with the institutional distinction between different kinds of music, popular music and art music, and I'm very sympathetic to that, and to your attempt to not care about that distinction. But I'm wondering whether questioning or trying to overcome certain dichotomies and distinctions does not imply setting up or affirming other kinds of other distinctions. So, because at one point, when you were talking about the dichotomies that you're trying to get away from, you were saying, you were even mentioning the distinction between good and bad. And I'm wondering whether you really, so my question is, isn't there for you as well a distinction between good and bad music? And maybe I just got you wrong. Maybe you didn't mean to question that distinction, but maybe you do. And if you do, I wonder how that's possible.
Yeah, no, I don't write a manifest or wave the flag that it has to be like this. It's just my position. I don't want to. If people go to the edge, like your colleague asked, if somebody try to go to the edge and see what is possible, of course, it's nice. It's always inspiring, and I go and see stuff like this, and I would not say this is the bad music. But it's just I have to take a few weapons with me, because they always try to kill this, you know. It's just fighting for the good, not just doing it. It's necessary, and in this fight, the good things and the beauty is, yeah, they did not survive well. The beauty that we see in the compositions today is more in the Schlager music, or in the, I don't know, in the chart music, or I don't know what you think of it. I don't want to distinct too much. It's just, you know, it's just me. I do this and I try to question the edit. Will the people get it? Okay. If somebody makes a film and doesn't care about the audience, if they get anything, so what? Do it. But it's just I have to define my position, and this has to do with my life, that I explained what I went through, and so my position is, yeah, I try to not see somebody bad. If Boulez was a great example, for example. He hated Wagner so much all his life. He was writing essays against him, and at the end, the best Ring des Nibelungen we have recorded for Deutsche Grammophon was conducted by him. It's great. It's fantastic if somebody can really move that forward, and he probably did not care about what would people say. And this is nice. If you define yourself, you make a step. Yeah, I came from the distinction world also, and I try to improve this. But in myself, I question myself. Like my grandfather, we talked about him, who is 91 now, and since 40 years he's refining his food every day. Sometimes he takes a teaspoonful of vinegar extra at a certain time after a certain meal, and he's refining this, and he's still riding his bicycle to the supermarket and buying stuff. So this is a way I do in music. So I add a spoon of vinegar sometimes here and there, but I would not say, if you don't use this vinegar, you are evil, you know. So I try to avoid this.
One question here.
A fun question.
Just a fun question. So when one day all the dualisms and antagonisms are leveled out, what would you do then? Would you still make music?
Yeah, because it's when you hold a speech and you have to talk about the music, then it sounds a bit like you feel you have to do this for a certain reason. The reality is, people just do this. People eat, people sleep, people sing, people dance, people make music. So it will never stop. It would be just so much easier to unfold whatever you have in your mind. And people are, the musicians I know, and it's a lot through all my life, they all have huge problems with touching something. At the moment I'm working with a famous pianist, Olga Scheps. She's a fantastic piano player. And a guy, I don't know if you know him, in Germany there is a guy who's doing a really, I don't know, type of techno music. It's a band, it's called Scooter. And Scooter wanted me to make, they are in their 20th anniversary, I think. And they asked me, they said for the 20th anniversary, they want to release a best of, but not in their style, if I could not do classical arrangements of their songs, somehow transform them into classical pieces for a classical piano player. And I did this. It's not easy because it's not much material in there. The most famous song is How Much Is the Fish? And then I approached Olga Scheps, and she said she would do, but her management and Sony Music and her agency and everybody is afraid of that she could lose anything by touching this. And I wrote the arrangement as good as I could. It's okay, and we just talked today on the phone. She's still desperate to do it, but she's like in a jail. So, and I think musicians nowadays have so many fears of doing something that they would love to do. And if the dualism would not be there anymore, I mean, this is an we are talking about utopia, yes, and I don't know if you will ever see this. Maybe it's happening when we have the singularity. So the seed AI is telling us the truth always. Don't drink this coffee now; it's too late, Stefan. So but then there would be a fantastic music because everybody would just do what they want without thinking. Like I said, some of my friends from that like my music when I play in the Elbphilharmonie, that they do not come because they think it's not their biotope or their environment. They feel unwell and don't know what to wear and how to act. And if this would not be, many things would be easier. And of course, I would do music probably the same.
I guess we're all waiting for the music.
Unfortunately, I did the music today for new music for the visuals, and it's still very bright. I don't know if you can wait
exactly
5 more minutes or so.
That's because we still got wine, we've still got something to eat, I guess, and that's why we also need some more time to get everything ready here. So you know, we've got some minutes. Take your wine, sit here, and then we'll be starting sometime later.